There are leaders in the world who are made for impact.
I saw this video by Lou Holtz, and it was called Do Right. And it made a profound impact on my life. It really did. And here I am, literally 40 years later, telling you about this video. And he said, do what's right, do your best, treat other people like you want to be treated, and understand that there's three questions everybody asks of you. Are you committed to excellence? The second one is, can I trust you? And the third one is, do you care about me as a person? And if you can answer yes to those three questions, then you've laid the foundation to be a person of influence.
I'm Gretchen Schott, and this is Made for Impact, a show for leaders who want to leave a lasting impact on their organizations, their teams, and their lives.
My guest today is Kyle DeFur. He is the president of the National Christian Foundation of Indiana, and he is someone that is very near and dear to my heart. He has had a huge impact on my life and the type of leader that I am and how I show up in the world today. He worked for True You, where he and I served together, where he was the president for several years. And before that, he served at St. Vincent Hospitals, where he also was the president and served for over 20 years. In our interview today, Kyle and I dig into the ideas and concepts around servant leadership. You are going to love the wisdom that he shares and lessons that he's going to teach us today on how to show up as your best self. Take a listen. Kyle, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so grateful to have this time with you today.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you, Gretchen.
Is it weird? Like we're back. It's like the gang's back together again.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We spent some time in front of a microphone doing podcasts together.
I know.
A lot of fun.
It's weird though, because now you're my guest. Instead of me just like having us ask questions, I have to actually be charming to you. This is a little bit different. Kyle, tell folks who don't know you like I do, a little bit about you, where you work, what you do, and all that. In case someone's listening and they don't know it, the amazing Kyle DeFur.
Well, I'm married to my beautiful wife, Dana. We've been married 38 years, and we have two sons who are both married. One lives in New York City, and the other lives here in Indianapolis. We have three grandchildren, two grandsons, a little granddaughter. The little granddaughter is 6 months old, and the grandsons are 4 years old and 3 years old, and very blessed. I, work-wise, am at the National Christian Foundation of Indiana, and have been here almost 3 years now, and I'm enjoying this work tremendously. It's been a wonderful fit for me. And career-wise, I was in hospital administration, really the majority of my career, 26 years in hospital administration. Majority of that with the Ascension St. Vincent system, the last 7 years here at the Indianapolis Hospital. And then you and I worked together, as you know, at True You.
We did.
I was there a little over 6 years. And also was a real growing experience for me. And it was a big transition for me moving from big hospitals and large organizations to a small startup organization. And some painful lessons in that for me, but it was a good experience. And I think prepared me well for what I'm doing, now. So I'm at this season of my life where it's interesting. I think that as we age, hopefully we become more fruitful in our life. And I'm excited about the next 20 years. I think it's going to be the best 20 years of my life and my career.
We have all those beautiful grandbabies. I still remember when we were just celebrating your first grandbaby and we bought you all those books that you should read for your grandbaby.
And we did. And they were with us this weekend, and we just had a great time with them. Yeah.
I love that Dana has her grandbaby girl now, too. The boys are wonderful, but she has a girl now, and that's the very best.
There's two sons, and it was two grandsons, no girls. And that little baby girl, she's beautiful. She's wonderful.
Oh, that's so wonderful. That's so great. So I want to dive in a little bit more into your background and your history. You are very transformational in my life and in my career and helping me really understand concepts of servant leadership and all of that. But let's take a little bit back, because I love that your history, you started in healthcare and then you worked for this nonprofit. Now you're doing this great work with the National Christian Foundation. But where do you in your life, Kyle, feel like that you've made an impact?
Yeah, I think that one of the key things, and we talked a lot about this at True You, is understanding what your gifts are, what unique, how you're designed, and I believe we're all designed for purposes, and understanding what your gifts are and doing the self-work around that to understand that. And for me, my gifts are in the area of administration and teaching and in giving. And so when I think through areas that I've made impact, it's really in the utilization of those gifts that I have. And everybody has unique gifts, and it's wonderful that we're all different, right? We have different personalities and different gifts. And so when I think of utilization of those gifts, it's in small groups that have been part of leading for many years and teaching as well. I really enjoy teaching and having the opportunity to do that. I think, of course, in work, it's using all those gifts and leadership and executive kind of leadership roles I've had over the years. Use them in parenting, as well, and then mentoring too. But trying to hone in those areas where, whether it's administration or teaching or in giving, and engaging with people in each of those areas, I think is where typically we end up making the most impact, or we get feedback from people that, hey, this was an area that we had some conversation or spent some time together talking about, and it was impactful for them.
What would you say were some of the tools or even books maybe that you read to really kind of help you understand your gifts? I know we talked about gifts quite a bit when we worked together, but when you and I worked together, I felt like you'd already done a lot, like you were catching me up on all the wonderful work that you'd already done on yourself. So for people that are listening now and hearing that, what would you advise them to consider reading or consider doing, or are there assessments that you took to really help you get clear on your gifts and your purpose?
When I think of administration and teaching and giving, there's a spiritual gifts inventory actually that I took that highlighted those from my perspective. And you can go online and do a spiritual gifts inventory and you'll find those tools. Yeah, there's great resources with that. But there's so many tools that are out there that are, whether it's the Myers-Briggs or DISC or Enneagrams and they all give some different insights, I think, into our own personality. And I am always careful with those that you don't get a label put on you. It gives some insight, gives you an angle. I think we're fairly complex beings, but it is helpful in terms of how should I be spending my time? Where should I be spending my time? What are the kinds of activities I should be involved in? Because we don't want to spend that time and being engaged in organizations or where we're not able to utilize those, because that's ultimately, if we're designed that way, that's where we're going to make the most impact and find the most meaning and purpose in what we do in our work. So I think that spiritual gifts inventory was helpful for me. There were some books that I read early on, like when I was in college. Who Switched the Price Tags by Tony Campolo was a book that had a huge impact on me in terms of setting such priorities life-wise. And it was a book that was based on a survey that had been done of individuals who were 80 years of age and older. And they asked me, live your life over again, what would you do? So the entire population they were asked this question was people who were 80 years of age and older. And they said, if you could live your life over again, what would you do differently? And there were three themes that came out of it. One was I would have reflected more on my life as I lived it. The second was I would have taken more risks. And the third was I would have done more things that will live on after I'm gone. And that was really wise advice. You could delve into all three of those, but that was a book that had a big impact on me of the reflection on your life as you live it. What is it maybe that I'm called to? What are my gifts and how should I spend my time? I want to reflect on my life as I live it, and I don't want to waste time. I want to use the time well so that I can look back on my life when I'm 80 or older. I look back on it and say, I used my life. I lived life to the fullest while I lived it. And I don't have any regrets. I don't have any regrets with that, right?
What would you say is the thread that you could pull between like your professional life and your personal life?
Yeah, so it's about integration. And when I was my first job out of college, I was at a hospital in Lexington, Kentucky, and Dana and I were newly married, and I had my office. And one day before leaving for work, Dana gave me a picture of herself in a frame, that I could put on my desk. And I said, well, thanks, Dana. I said, but work is work and home is home. And that was the wrong thing to say, Gretchen. That was the wrong thing to say. And she took the picture back from me very quickly, and turned around and walked out of the room. And I just stood there. I thought, what did I just say? But the point of that story is I was trying to compartmentalize my life. Work was work, home was home. And the reality is life's not that way. And the rich life and the full life is one that's integrated. That I'm the same person at home as I am at church, as I am at work, as I am when I'm with my friends. And we all have different roles. We play those different roles, and there are certain behaviors that go with that. But just understanding that thread of I am who I am, and I'm going to be the same person. I'm going to have integrity in all the different roles that I play. And that is the thread that weaves through that. It's not about compartmentalization. It's about integration. And that was a painful lesson for me, Gretchen. I laugh about it. She laughs about it now too. But at the time, there wasn't any laughing at all at the time.
I've heard that story a couple of times, and I'm just going to say, like, every time you tell it, it's still very funny to me. Because I know you, and I'm just like, you did what? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about servant leadership. And so how do you define servant leadership? And how do you think it differs from traditional leadership models?
I think that leadership, at its core is interesting because leadership, there's thousands of books out there on leadership, right? There's all these resources, leadership experts, and it can get very confusing. I think leadership at its core, I think John Maxwell says this, that leadership is influence. If you're a leader, you're influencing people. Now, how you do that, you could influence people by beating with a stick, right? You can influence people with a carrot. You can influence people by being in a meaningful relationship with them. And so ultimately, leadership really is about influence. I think that, you think of servant leadership, you're stepping into influencing with virtuous intent. I want to lead in a way that's in the best interest of the people I'm leading. It's also in the best interest of the organization that I have a role and responsibility in. And there's a sense of self-sacrifice in that too, right? So I want to lead with relational capital, not because I told you you have to, or you're going to be negative adverse consequences if you don't. But the servant leader says, how can I help this person become the best version of themselves that they can be, right? How can I help them to grow and to develop? And ultimately, I think love's not a word we use a lot in the workplace oftentimes. But Marsha Barnes said this once, I've always remembered it. She said that her definition of love was acting in the long-term best interest of another. So if you love somebody, you're going to act in their long-term best interest. And that may mean that you're going to have some difficult conversations with them because you're acting in their long-term best interest. And it may be uncomfortable for me to have that conversation with them, but the reality is I want to serve them well and help them to grow and to develop into what their potential is. It's not soft. Servant leadership, I don't look at it as being soft or being passive. I think some people kind of shy away from that, and it's become kind of a buzzword, and so it's kind of hard to use. But I think ultimately leadership is about influence. The question is, how do you want to influence? How do you want to bring about the results that you want to see happen in the organization, and do it in a way that's not manipulative, but has virtuous intent for the people that you're working with, that are working for you, or that you're working for, and also in the best interest of the organization. It's a commitment to do the right thing for the right reasons. And that's hard. That can be difficult sometimes. And sometimes as the leader, there may be adverse consequences for you by living that out, right? Depending on the people you're working with and what their priorities are. And it's stepping into that and wanting to lead in a particular way.
Something that I always admired about you working with you was you worked in healthcare, and in many cases, some days that is literally life and death. And yet when we would talk about, we were working together, it was not so serious of the work. But yet when people would talk about business challenges that they were having, you never described things that people were dealing with as like, well, it's not like when a doctor's trying to figure out, what do I do here, right? And there was never any like condescension or trying to like one up. And so I'm curious how, when you look at or work with leaders today in your work, how do you kind of pull this thought of serving others forward in businesses that maybe don't see themselves as a business that maybe is set up to be a servant leader? Maybe they think of themselves as a servant leader, but my business isn't necessarily serving anyone else. How would you help them kind of pull that forward?
Yeah, so I think that ultimately, if you're in a position of leadership, the expectation is that you're going to be driving results in the organization, right? If you're a leader, you're going to drive results in the organization. And I think a leader also is not necessarily that you have people reporting to you. A leader is a person of influence, right? A leader is somebody who influences other people. And I remember in my hospital days, sometimes you'd go on the nursing unit, and the leader of that unit was not necessarily the nursing manager. It could have been a nurse who's been on that unit for 30 years, and everybody knows they're really sharp. They know their stuff. They have great relational capital. Doctors all respect that nurse. So it's, it really is about, if you're a leader, the expectation is that you're going to generate results. And as a leader, how do you get people to want to do the right thing for the organization to drive the results, right? That's right, the challenge. And I saw a video, my first job, the same job where I was when I refused to take my wife's picture. By the way, I did end up taking that picture the next day, and it was on my desk.
And I noticed you had pictures of your family behind you. You have learned.
That's right. That's right. I had the opportunity, and this is my first job out of grad school in hospital administration. I saw this video by Lou Holtz, and it was called Do Right. And it made a profound impact on my life. It really did. And here I am, literally 40 years later, telling you about this video. And he said, do what's right, do your best, treat other people like you want to be treated, and understand that there's 3 questions that everybody asks of you subconsciously. Everyone who works for you, that works with you, that you work for, is asking these 3 questions in their mind about you subconsciously. And that is, are you committed to excellence? Second one is, can I trust you? And the third one is, do you care about me as a person? And if you can answer yes to those 3 questions, can I trust you? Are you committed to excellence? And do you care about me as a person? Then you've laid the foundation to be a person of influence in the people that you work with and work for you and you work for. And that's been really helpful for me to keep it really simple. I need things to be simple for me. And I've always been mindful of that. And so, in every job that I've had, and when you and I worked together, I said to you, here's 3 questions I'm going to ask of you, Gretchen. I'm going to ask you, are you committed to excellence? Can I trust you? Do you care about me as a person? But also, I want to live up to those 3 questions in your mind. And if at any time you feel like I'm not living up to those, I give you permission to hold me accountable to those, right? To bring it up. Say, hey, I'm not sure, I'm struggling a little bit here because I'm not perfect. I don't always live up to that like I would like to. But at least it lays the groundwork that, you know what, I want to live up to these 3 questions. And I want that for you as well. And I think we do that well. We're going to lay the framework for our organization to drive results. We're going to trust each other, and we're going to have high standards of excellence. We're going to move the bar on the metrics that we have with our organization. And that's been really helpful to me. And I think that even if people say, well, I don't know about if I'm a servant leader or not, I think asking those 3 questions and say, what do you think about these 3? And do you want to answer yes in the minds of the people you work with and work for you to those 3 questions? And if you do that, I think you're living out servant leadership, right? And the third one, do you care about me as a person, is the one where you don't care about me just for the results that I generate at the workplace. I'm not just a cog in the wheel to generate results in this organization. You actually care about me and my family and my career path and my spiritual health and my physical health and all those pieces. You want me to be successful in my life, and you care about me as a person, not just for the work that I do. And so living up to that one sometimes is the hardest. Those 3 questions I think are really big. And there is when I have, as I have a number of times in my career, realize that people aren't making eye contact with me or something's not right there relationally. I go back to those questions and say, I wonder which one of these 3 they've experienced my leadership in a way that I'm not living up to excellence, or I'm not trustworthy, or that I care about them as a person. And that's been helpful then to get that out with them.
I love that you shared that. I remember that. And you asked me those 3 questions, or said those 3 things to me often too. So it wasn't just like this is how I screen people. That's definitely core to how you engage with people. I love that. I'm so glad that you shared that. Can you share any challenges or obstacles that you encountered when you were implementing servant leadership and how you overcame them? I mean, you kind of referenced it a little bit, but what would you say are some challenges or obstacles that you kind of overcame?
Yeah, a lot of them. And they're all about me.
Whatever.
Wishing for me. The issues are me, right? I'm selfish, or I'm prideful, or I'm egotistical, or I'm dishonest. And I say that meaning those are battles that we all deal with. And if we really intend to live up to those 3 questions, and if we really want to be a person of influence with virtuous intent, sometimes I get in my way of that, and just acknowledging that I'm capable of that, and that sometimes I let myself go into my mind to a place that's not healthy or not good with that. And so for me, I think the intervention for me is, I have daily quiet time every morning. And so I block out at least 45 minutes every morning. For me, that's Bible reading, and that's listening to a reflection, a daily reflection. It's time in prayer. And I think again, my faith is really core to who I am and what I'm about. And so it's thinking about scripture, meditating on scripture, and being open to wanting to walk in step with the Spirit, and not being in a place I want to be in a place of light, not a place of dark. And so I've also learned that's an ongoing, continual process, right? I was good an hour ago. Now I'm not so good, right? But the awareness of it is of great value. And so that's the pray continually piece of abiding in Him and He abides in us, and just being intentional about that. is really important. So that's helpful for me as an intervention to make sure that is my heart in the right place? Am I thinking about this the right way? Do I need to step away and go in a room and have some quiet time and reflect a little bit? Because we're all human and none of us are perfect and none of us live up to those all the time. But hopefully as we mature, we become more healthy and dependent upon walking the step of the Spirit.
Do you still take a retreat for yourself every year?
I do. Yeah, I do. Every October. Yeah, I do a 1-day retreat, and it's a set agenda with the time there. I put my technology in the console in my car, so it doesn't go. I go to a retreat center typically. Just take a journal and take a book and take a Bible, and it's just a day of thinking about the last year and thinking about this season of my life and looking at my own definition of success for my own life, and am I living up to that? Am I not? What needs to change? Life is it's this continual process of change, and every season has its uniqueness. And so, and I know you're at a point where your kids are in college or going to college or in high school. And so there's things you want to reflect on and say, this is going to be a transition year for your one son who's going to college next year. And so what does that look like for me? And how do I support him in that? And how do I need to be thinking about that to help him to be successful in that transition? And, you may have somebody going into high school, right? Or Bella's graduating from college, all those kinds of things, but also with parents and friends and family. It's just thinking through all those different roles that I have, those different hats that I wear, and as a friend, and as a husband, and as a father, and as somebody that people work with. And again, it gets back to that, the book, that Who Switched the Price Tags. Reflect on your life as you live it, right? So that you don't look back on your life and have regrets. That means being fully present and choosing to be fully present at those times of birthdays and life events. And so that you can look back and say, I've got no regrets. One of the things that I hear periodically, especially at this phase of my life, people will say, I can't believe how fast time flies. Time just flies by. And I made a note to myself, I never want to hear myself say that, because underlying that statement, sometimes, not always, but sometimes underlying that statement is, I don't know that I've been as fully present as I wanted to be. And now they're leaving. And so just being intentional about, I want to be able to look back and say, no regrets. I was all in. I was a sponge. I soaked it all up, right? Those times. Having said that, I know that life does move quickly, and some transitions are really difficult. So I'm not understating that. But to be able to look back and say, I did live my life fully as I lived it, and I got no regrets tied to that, is a wonderful thing to be able to say. But it takes a lot of intentionality to do that.
I think two things that were really key that you taught me when I worked for you. Before I worked for you, I was working for a very large organization, very large software company, and had been in that startup world for a number of years, and had come in with this eagerness and go, 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 go. And I remember you talking about this slow down, this retreat that you would take. I mean, you would guys, I'm not going to be available because I'm taking off this day to go do this, which was unique to hear someone doing that. And the second thing that you taught me that has totally transformed my life was keeping Sunday sacred, that you didn't work over the weekends and you really didn't work on Sunday. Sunday is a day of rest, and that comes from our shared Christian beliefs, and that God meant that to be a day of rest and to not work on those days. Because before I started working for you, I worked all weekends, right? I worked every day of the week, trying just to keep up in that rat race. And I remember when I first started to work for you, I would send emails and stuff. And I remember you sitting down with me and saying, we don't work on the weekend. That's not an expectation. If that's how you want to do it, that's fine. But know that I'm not looking at that. I am not going to be working. So I will look at that on Monday. And I'm not even going to realize you sent it to me because I'm not looking until Monday. And I was like, oh, it's really okay. And it took me a good while to really get comfortable with the fact that I didn't have to. And now that's what I tell people. I don't work on the weekends. The weekends are time for my family. Specifically on Sunday, I don't check email. I don't get on calls or anything. That was hugely influential in my life.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think it's just how we're designed. Just like we're made to sleep at night. That's how we're designed. Jesus said, Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, right? And so it's because we need a day of downtime. And that's just the way that we're designed. So that, because if you don't, then you're running too fast. It's not healthy. You probably aren't able to reflect as well as you ought to, or to be able to be as wise as you want to be or need to be, because you haven't had the downtime. It's like going without sleep. You're not as sharp. You're not as bright. You're not as able to add as much value. And so it's just stepping into that and acknowledging that I can take a day off, and that's the way I'm designed. In fact, I'm going to be a lot better on Monday because I took Sunday off.
Right. Well, and I think to your point about being intentional about reflection, and I have also tried to create like a daily kind of examination of how was my day. I'm not always great about it, but that Sunday, I definitely have that weekly, right? Where I can pause and think about the week and how I want to show up that week, or what's important for me to show up to, where do I need to have intention. But without that daily practice of thinking about, was I my best self today? What could I have done differently? It all just kind of builds, right? So if you're not doing any kind of daily examination, if you're not having any day of rest, if you were just going to do that, well, I'm going to take a day retreat and think about my year, that is going to be so hard.
Yeah, you're right.
There's so much you have to get uncovered. You can't do it in a day, right?
Yeah, well, I like to think that as we mature, we become wiser as we mature. That reflection and that intentionality as we live moves from once a year to once a quarter to once a week to daily to continual, right? So we're comfortable in our own skin. We know what we're about. We know what we're trying to accomplish. And from a faith perspective, knowing that God will give me what I need. He'll give me the wisdom I need and help me to navigate through this really difficult situation, whatever it is. But it's that daily walking in step. And Scripture says, pray continually, or walk in step with the Spirit, those kinds of things. And so I like to think that as we mature, we do that more and more. And there's a richness in life in that. There's a peace in that. There's being comfortable in your own skin in that. It's wonderful.
Did you choose a word this year? Are you still doing one word?
Yes. My word has been abide. And that's from John 15:5. I'm the vine, you're the branch. You abide in me and I abide in you. You'll bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And so that's been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful word for this year.
Mine's wisdom, because I wanted to be more wise. Ah, yes, that's a good word for you, Gretchen.
It's a wonderful one. It's a wonderful one.
Before I let you go, can you talk a little bit about National Christian Foundation and what that organization is and what you do and how people could get connected with you and learn more about it?
Yeah, thanks, Gretchen. National Christian Foundation is a wonderful organization that comes alongside people who want to be good stewards with what God's blessed them with. So we provide donor-advised funds as a tool that's a highly tax-efficient way. People gift assets to NCF. It can be cash, but it can be securities or land or privately held business interests, those kinds of things. We receive those assets. They get a tax deduction for the value of those assets when they give them to us. If it needs sold, if it needs liquidated, like a non-cash asset, it's liquidated, and the proceeds then go into that giver's donor-advised fund. And a donor-advised fund is like a charitable checking account where they then make grant recommendations to the different charities, churches, and so on, where they're going to make gifts out of. But it's highly tax efficient. If somebody gives a non-cash asset to NCF, appreciated asset, and then we sell it, what they would have paid in capital gains tax, they now have to give away. So in essence, you're converting dollars that would have gone for taxes to allow that person to be generous in the areas and the places where they want to be generous. That's a wonderful. And the money in the donor advice fund is invested and it's growing tax-free inside of that donor advice fund as well. So that's the technical aspect of what we do. The other piece that I think people join NCF for equally is that we come alongside, we create this community of, there's over 800 donor advised funds with NCF in Indiana, families and individuals and couples who are wanting to go deep and understand what's it mean to be a wise steward? What's it mean to be a cheerful giver? What's the Bible really say about money and principles and applying these to life? How much money should I give to my kids? When should I give it to them? What should my lifestyle be? How do I navigate through those questions, right? And where do you go to have those conversations? And so we're just a great resource. We'll do 25 events this year. We're bringing people together to go deep into each of those areas. And so it's a wonderful value add. And then they're connected with all these other people they hadn't met before, that are also like them. They say, what, for whatever reason, God's blessed me with some wealth, with the ability to generate wealth or inherit, whatever it is. But I want to be a good steward with it, and I want to be a joyful giver, and I want to use this to further the kingdom. And so they do that through this partnership with NCF. So it's been so much fun to meet these incredibly generous people and wrestle together with them around these issues.
Yeah, it's deep thoughts. Kyle, what's the best way for people to get connected with you if they want to learn more or they want to talk to you more about the generous work that you're doing with NCF?
So my email address is kdefer@ncfgiving.com. Or you can also go to our website, which is ncfgiving.com, and go to Indiana, and you can find more information about NCF as well. But I'm happy to talk with anyone or meet with anyone who'd like to learn more.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. I always learn when I talk with you, so thank you for saying yes. Oh, I just love him. He's so great. He's been such a wonderful influence in my life and my son's life. Before we started our interview, my older son popped in and saw that I was talking to Mr. DeFur and wanted to say hello. I hope that you got a lot out of this interview. I really love those 3 questions that he shared from Lou Holtz. Are you committed to excellence? Do I trust you? Do you care about me as a person? Ask about those questions with the people that you interact with. Think about those questions and your leadership, and are you showing up as your best self? That's my challenge for you this week. I hope that you liked the show. I hope that if you did like the show, you'll leave us a review, leave us some stars. I'm trying to get about 20 reviews after each episode, so let us know what you thought. I hope these lessons are helping you step out and become your best self. And if you are, I'd love to hear about it. We're also on YouTube, so make sure you like and listen to the show there, subscribe, share the show with others. But most importantly, I want you to remember, you are made for impact.